rains and Kampala traffic? I don't know. I have tried to figure this out, but it's clearly it's not something that I am yet to find out. So probably you could help out on this one.
Well, from my experience, I think you look at the fact that whenever it rains, everyone wants to drive.
Yes.
There are those days where people leave their cars home. Maybe they are rushing somewhere. Maybe, you know, they don't have fuel. But when it rains, however much you have that small money you're saving aside, that is going to go for the fuel, and you're going to have to go to work with the car. So I think that also creates the traffic on the road because everyone is trying to get in there. I guess so far I've been able to relate it to that, but also not to mention that some people avoid certain roads or shortcuts that would have been used on dry days. So they all get to the main road, and that creates the traffic within the main road. So I guess also that contributes to the fact that now you want to avoid the bad places that, you know, come up with the rain, and you're all on the same road, and that creates traffic. So far, I have those two reasons, but we can continue to make some research.
We'll keep doing our investigations, but it actually makes a very clear explanation. Everybody wants to take their car out because no one wants to, you know, I mean, travel under the rains. No one wants to get to their office dripping. It's not really a nice look for the eye. Well, that's it from the traffic updates, but Mollen is here to give you the weather forecast and more from the climate news. Well, it's going to be raining like this for the rest of the day. Maybe you need to carry an umbrella, maybe a jacket. Probably you should. You just never know what could happen. Well, from me, Philomena Masco, have a wonderful and productive Monday morning.
Well, thank you, Philo. Now, earlier today, we were talking about luck and the rains. Now, I don't see where the good luck comes in when you have to go to work and it's raining on you, because not everyone is having that car or able to get to you know, public means. Either way, it's going to rain on you just from your home to the roadside. Where is the good luck there? So I still have an argument that says, no, there is no good luck that is coming with the rains, except that it is good news. We're going to start planting. And last week we did see the East African Prediction Center, ECPAC, partnering with a lot of national meteorological centers to come out with a forecast for our March to May rainy seasons. And I can tell you one thing, that this year's rainy season is actually a good one. And we're looking at much more of the rains expected compared to the last 3 seasons that have been mostly like failed seasons. So I can say this is a good start. We're looking at some of those rains starting to set in, but a lot of areas within the southern part of the country are most likely to be the lucky ones, if we bring in luck again, because they will be starting with those rains earlier compared to the rest of the country. But we'll be giving you more details as the National Center continues to downscale that forecast and look at specifically which areas can we look out for and when to actually start planting. But I can tell you one thing, this is the right time to actually start preparing and look forward for those rains to come through. If you have your gardens, please make sure they're ready. If the rains start to kick in, then you can start the planting. But away from that, we also want to look at what is happening now. This week, we are expecting most of the states across the UN, and that is the UN member states, to actually meet in Nairobi. And the talk is going to be about the end of single plastic use. Now, this is kind of good news. This could be the first time ever that we are seeing member states agree to some kind of accord to stop, you know, use of single-use plastics. Now, there has been a lot of talk about using Kavera, even other plastics, and it seems like we have not implemented much more of the policies even around the topic. But for the first time, we're seeing the UN member states meet up to make sure they put an end to this kind of talk and have that agreement. Now, this is happening this month, and we'll be getting details of what comes up from that meeting, which will be held in Nairobi. And hopefully this puts across an image that shows that the world is actually willing to put across something to end plastic use. This is a danger to our environment. Now, plastics do not allow water to go through. They do harm to the soils. It's something we want to end, and this is something that the UN has committed to, and I'm glad to see that they're actually meeting over this. Now, you talk about the end of single-use plastics, and Uganda did try that. We actually came up with an act last year that was showing that we're going to end that. We had that end Kavera, you know, hashtag. There was a lot of talk about that. Ministry of Water and Environment was at the forefront of making sure that we had that implemented. Now, I don't know about the implementation, because I am still seeing those plastics, those Kaveras on the market. Where did that end? That's the question that we're still asking, and we demand answers. Hopefully, with these member states coming together and having this kind of agreement, we also now have to add on what we've committed to as a country to make sure that we end, the use of Kavera. This is what is getting us to the bad news that we normally talk about every morning here on the devastating events that are happening across the world. Now, also talking about that, we did read a story this morning about Brazil, which was last hit by floods and mudslides, and a lot of lives being lost to such extreme weather events. But we also saw a tropical storm Eunice that did hit parts of Amsterdam, and that devastated the area. Now, so far, we have over 150,000 homes that are without power because of the effect of the storm. Now, this did also cause a lot of flooding on the streets. Most of the cars that actually ended up being flooded, and also there are reports that some of the containers so far are not seen. Close to 26 containers that have been lost due to the effect of tropical storm Eunice that has been across the area. Now, this did start off on Friday, and so far these guys are still dealing with the aftermath, looking at 150,000 homes still without power, and that is quite an extent of how most of these events related to heavy rainfall can actually affect an area. Now, we're still talking about Madagascar. This area has been, I have not seen an area having been hit by this amount of cyclones within just, such kind of frequency within just 1 month. Now, just last week we were talking about the effect of Dumako. That was a tropical storm that developed close to Madagascar, and so far the reports that we have is that 14 people have died because of this tropical storm. Now, what happened is that there has been heavy rains, and a lot of homes were destroyed close to the coast, and we are looking at so far the death toll from that coming to 14 in number. Now, as if that is not enough, we now have another tropical cyclone that is raging across the area. Now, it is following the path of tropical cyclone Batsirai that happened just like 19 days ago, and that caused a lot of damage across Madagascar. We're looking at a death toll of 121 people that died from that tropical cyclone. Now, we're looking at another storm, another cyclone, and that is Emnati, that is also following the same pathway like the one we had in Batsirai. Now, not to mention the fact that this area has just been hit by Dumako, which we're talking about with, people dying, close to 14 people. Now, this cyclone is actually very strong. It's looking at most of the effects so far also being felt across Madagascar is already how the strong winds coming in. Now, people have already evacuated some of the places close to the coast, but there is still a lot of work to be done, because there are people who are also still in the pathway of this cyclone that could still be affected. Now, also the forecast that we have for this cyclone that is coming through across all the weather centers from this morning, we're saying that it has already brought effects across Mauritius and Reunion, which are the areas that have been most hit by this cyclone so far. Now, Emnati is coming in strong with winds of about 120 kilometers per hour. Now, that is a high speed wind. If you can imagine a windy day where trees are falling off, that's the kind of strength that is coming with this cyclone. Now, that is already headed towards Madagascar, looking at mostly central Madagascar. That could also bring effects to Antananarivo, that is the country's capital, and most of the islands so far actually already being affected by this. And it's also expected that after it makes landfall, it could bring effects to even areas of Mozambique and Malawi, also likely to be hit. We're also looking at some of the coastal areas across South Africa. Now, it looks like even within the 24 hours that it was first forecast, it was already hitting Mauritius towards Reunion, already in that red, where you see those red lines. Now, that is the circles for the path of the cyclone. You can see the area in Madagascar that is actually likely to be most hit. Now, in the next 24 hours, it's also likely to be moving through. Now, 48 hours, that is expected to have wind speed of 195 kilometers per hour. Now that you imagine a kind of winds that will uproot the trees from the ground, that's the speed at which this cyclone is coming through, and it is likely to make landfall then in the next 72 hours from now. We're looking at also the wind speed decreasing to 150 kilometers per hour. Now this is the kind of cyclone that will bring much more effects. We could be looking at more numbers of people dying. If you look at Basra bringing in 121 death toll, but also destruction of homes. We had over 190,000 homes being destroyed, and almost the whole island to the south of Madagascar was destroyed. Now these people are already having to depend on humanitarian acts. We had UNICEF go through. Actually, we also had the UK government donate quite a huge sum of money to make sure that these people are relocated and put in other relocation centers. But not to mention that this is now being frequent over the area, and already scientists are saying something needs to be done for this kind of extreme weather events that we're seeing. Now the frequency across Madagascar is one evidence that this is a climate crisis we're looking at. It's not just here, but for the last 50 years, I can tell you, this is the first time we're seeing cyclones hit Madagascar at such a frequency, which is something that should be worrying, because no one is safe. We could be looking at much more of these storms develop even for other areas of Africa, especially the southern part of Africa, which has been worst hit. Now we are lucky that here in Uganda, and if you look at we're close to East Africa, we are in the middle, we are in the tropics, what we call the tropics, quite where there is actually that kind of weather that we hardly get to experience most of those cyclones because of temperatures. They are not favorable for some of those cyclones to form. But we are also not safe, because even years back we did see cyclones actually that formed close to East Africa, and we also had effects of that. So it could get to that level, and what is worrying is that we're not paying enough attention to the emergency at hand. We're not making it look like we need to fight this, we need to stop this from happening. And the good thing is that we have time to actually divert this. But when we tell people the only way out of this is abolish, stop using fossil fuels, and we're still going for those. Avoid deforestation, we're still cutting down the trees. And the use of single plastic use, we are still dumping plastics. What is going to happen? It looks like there is no effort being done, but I still have hope that people can change their ways and we can avert most of this crisis already, and that is my hope, and we could all look forward to that. But anyway, away from what seems to be bad news, we also want to look at the good luck that did come in this morning across the country, and we're going to tap in from the satellites over Uganda right now. Take a look at how the weather is looking like across the country, and we will start off with that rainy system that is stretching from Lake Victoria. Now this is the rainmaker for the morning rains that we've seen across most areas. Now that is covering mostly across the western part of Lake Victoria. Masaka already having that strong storm, even up to now looking at mostly rainy conditions. Now it seems like most of those have started to clear across Kampala, but those are the rains that we did start off with. If you look at the colors so far across Kampala, you look at those from yellow, now it's coming to blue colors, meaning we're starting to clear up actually. But areas of central, you look at Mubende already having those rains, and across southwestern Uganda, you look at Mbarara, also towards areas of Bushenyi, close to Kasese as well, still having those rainy conditions as we speak. We are looking at also the southern part of Lake Victoria Basin towards the west, that is across Sembabule Rengo, also still having those rainy conditions, and most likely those will continue for much of the morning. If you look at how that is playing out, it looks like most of that system is moving westwards, so meaning that the western part of Lake Victoria as well as southwestern Uganda might be dealing with those rains for the rest of the morning today. But you also look at some of the areas that are likely to have that kind of wet weather this morning. We're looking at the northwestern part of the country. Now this area has been quite dry, but you look at least some good news coming in through. We do have that rainy system that started off earlier this morning. It looks like it is intensifying. If you look at at the colors from blue to the yellow, that means the system is intensifying. Most likely it will be bringing us much more of those rains across the area. We also look at most of the cloudy conditions that are still developing across Lake Choga region towards Moria, Mbale as well, having those cloudy conditions. Now most likely most of those will clear into sunny intervals, but we are still having a forecast for rainy conditions, especially for the southern part of the country. You also look at Midwestern Uganda, where we have Hoima close to areas of Fort Portal and Ndoroko also did start off with a little bit of those rains earlier this morning, and those expected to continue into the afternoon. Now, as we head into the afternoon, we could be looking at much more of those conditions, especially across southwestern Uganda. You also look at parts of central as well as the Lake Victoria Basin. That system might still be there. So this is why I tell you, if you are leaving home, please make sure you're not leaving that warm jacket. It might be helpful even later, because we're looking at temperatures keeping a little bit down, as those clouds will still be over the skies. But now for the Karamoja region, northern Uganda, eastern Uganda is still quite dry, so you might be looking at sunny intervals throughout the day. So that is one area that you can actually relax, have some light clothing. But the rest of the country, you still are in for those rains that could be coming your way. So even when you're leaving, you can still have that umbrella with you to make sure that it doesn't rain on you. It doesn't look good if it rains on you and you have the forecast, looking at the forecast. So it's quite impressive how you can get out of the house and you prepared for the weather, and it starts raining and you're just pulling out your umbrella and you're like, yeah, I got the forecast. So thanks to UBC, it can't rain on me. Well, I want to leave you at that and wish you quite a good morning. We have more coming your way. We will be having Good Morning Uganda agenda coming up. Robert will be here to take you through that. Have a wonderful morning.